Hey, I'm Tina. I went to Parowan High School. It's a really rural school. There were students that came there from Brian Head, Summit, and Paraguna, and so it was a pretty small school. There were AP classes offered that students could take, like English and history. There were also tech classes that students could come to Cedar and take, like mechanics or CNA classes. There were about 5% of Hispanic students, and there were only 2 African American kids in the time that I was in school. Parowan in general is a lower income community, so I'm sure that there were lower income students, but most of the people there were doing okay. There was a severe unit sped classroom that had about 6 or 7 kids in it. They were allowed to come to some of our regular classes, but most of the time they stuck to their own classroom. All of the Hispanic kids that came there that I know of could already speak English when they got to school. I'm not sure where they learned it, but they could speak English before they got to the high school. 90% of the population was white while I was in school, so I was part of the large majority. In my junior and senior year, there were a lot of foreign exchange students, though, that made up other races. Being part of the white percentage, I was part of the majority. I was part of the I was in the top 10 of my class. I was 1 in 20 girls in my class, and I was able to do basically everything I wanted to do, whether it was sports or grade-wise. I was doing pretty well. Something I did remember is in 7th grade we had a student come into our school and he didn't speak English, and his mom didn't want him to learn English, and she opted out. And I just remember reading in the teaching tolerance article that we read that a parent can opt a student out of ELL services, but the school just has to do annual proficiency tests for that student. I definitely think that I had cultural and social capital in my school. I had multiple teachers that were also my coaches, and I was a pretty good athlete, so the coaches wanted me to succeed so I could play. I think that had a negative effect on me, though, because I got away with things that I shouldn't have gotten away with, like skimming by in classes that other people worked really hard on, and I feel like that gave me a negative experience of high school and didn't prepare me well for college. I think that the average person would think my schooling experience is pretty good if you were to just look at certain things, but I think that my schooling experiences were a little bit harder than other people's. I was a really low-income student, and we were barely making it a lot of times. I remember we had an assignment that we had to write about our favorite food, and I wrote about Top Ramen, and the teacher was making fun of me for that. And that's the only thing that we really could eat when I was a kid, is because it was cheap and that's what we had. I would like to think that my idea of ideologies that I've had has gotten better over the semester. I like to think that I'm a pretty open person, but I'm sure that there are people that feel like I have judged them for some reason. I want everyone in my class to feel like they are included and they're meant to be there. I don't want kids to feel like they don't belong in my classroom because they aren't the same religion or the same race as me. I know it will be hard for some of them to connect with me because I will be part of the majority of the race in my school probably, but I just want the students that aren't the majority to know that they are welcome in my classroom and that I want to help them succeed. One idea I do want to promote to my students is the whole idea about LGBTQ. I think that's like a rising community, and I feel like more and more people are identifying with it. And I think that that's something that we need to learn to be more open about and accept people in that culture, because it's starting to become more and more common, and we shouldn't bully someone because they're different than us in that sense. Something I want to do in my classroom to make sure that privileges and stereotypes are muted is something that we have talked about in class. I think that it would be great to not have class parties for Christmas or for holidays that are Christian-based, because I don't want a student of a different religion to feel left out. I think also we talked about this, like celebrating birthdays. I guess it depends on the majority of the students and what they'd like to do, but if there is a student that is of a religion that doesn't want to celebrate a birthday, then we need to accommodate to that and figure out a way to make them feel like they're still important and they're still loved in the classroom. I did like the teaching tolerance article that also talked about teaching bias and Our cultural differences is what makes businesses succeed and economies run. If we don't do this, it's a disservice to our students, to our country, and to our world. I just think that we need to teach other teachers and other students that we just need to be accepting of everyone, and regardless of their differences. And I hope that we can get to the point where those students that aren't part of the majority feel like they belong in our classroom as well. And I hope that we can get to the point that we can reach them and they can understand that.